Hello, coaches. So today we're going to be digging into a concept I'm often talking about in class when it comes to skills like paraphrasing, summarizing, and reflecting, whether it's in class with my own training or developmental programs I've done with BetterUp over the years. I'm often asked by coaches why I prefer questions over the use of paraphrasing and summarizing. And oftentimes, the reason paraphrasing and summarizing are seen as helpful has to do with the idea of making sure the coach and the client understand one another. And my contention is that using the client's meaningful language is one of the best ways to demonstrate an understanding towards the client, to work with them in an understanding way, and to help the client better understand themselves. So, as I look at this unpacking of the idea of understanding and the client, I wanted to explore some of the ICF's perspectives and ideas around understanding with the client. And hopefully that allows us to better inform the work we do in session when it comes to what we know, what we understand about who we are working with, and what they know, what they understand about themselves. So let's get to work looking at understanding. So let's start by considering two of the ICF's core competencies: cultivates trust and safety and listens actively. So I'll check in on the definition. Competency 4 cultivates trust and safety. The partner, or the definition is, the coach partners with the client to create a safe, supportive environment, allowing the client to share freely, maintaining a relationship of mutual trust, respect, and trust. One of the elements is that the coach should seek to understand the client within their context, which may include their identity, environment, experiences, values, and beliefs. So seeking to understand, but that's a little bit different from fully understanding the client, to have a good read on them. But we should seek to understand the client and their context, their identity, their environment, experiences, values, and beliefs. That's an aspect of building trust and safety that is important to consider. Next, competency 6 listens actively. The definition is, we focus on what the client is and is not saying to fully understand what is being communicated in the context of the client's systems and to support the client's self-expression. Now, to fully understand, now that is as a tall order from the ICF's competencies here. I'd probably even suggest a bit of an adjustment on the language here to demonstrate a willingness to fully understand might be how I would edit this, to demonstrate a willingness to fully, there we go, to fully understand what is being communicated. It's not about the coach fully understanding for themselves the information of the client's story, the information of the client's, the details and everything going on in the background. But we should focus on what the client is and isn't saying. And doing that, we better understand them and we demonstrate a willingness to fully understand what is being communicated in the context of the client's systems and to support their self-expression. Some of the elements here: number 1, considers the client's context, identity, environment, experiences, values, and beliefs to enhance understanding of what the client is communicating. So what this is saying is we're taking into account what the client has communicated about themselves so that we better understand what they're communicating in this moment of the session. We're thinking of them holistically. We're listening to them holistically. And therefore, number 2, we should reflect and summarize what the client communicated to ensure clarity and understanding. What's interesting here is how the PCC marker unpacks this and other things that the ICF has communicated, which I agree with. Who is the focus of that understanding in this number 2? And it's pretty much the client's understanding that we're trying to ensure. Number 5, we integrate the client's words, tone of voice, body language, overall expression to determine the full meaning of what is being communicated. And is it important for the coach to have that full determination? That's the thing that I'm trying to harp on with this video. So it is going to be a bit of a ramble, but are we as coaches paid to have, to be in the position of us determining their meaning for us to ensure for ourselves our understanding of their situation, context, identity, environment, and so on? Or is our active listening skill focused on demonstrating our desire to understand and helping them to more fully understand themselves by what we're taking from what they've communicated and replaying it back, relaying it back to them? It might seem like a small thing or really digging into the weeds of the language of the competencies, but really, when you think about the way your ears are tuned during a coaching session, are you listening for information that gives you the ability to better process what the client's going through, to verbally synthesize what the client has articulated so that you can have a better grasp of what they're saying, what they're communicating? Or when we reflect back the client's language or listen to the client's language and expression, are we building up resources that we can use to replay, to reflect what we've heard, so the client's synthesis, so the client's understanding is built up over time? And it really does make a difference in the assessing that we see. As an ICF trainer in the performance evaluation, mentor coaching assessments that I run, when you hear a coach trying to understand the client's situation for themselves, their questions are much more informational, have a much more informational bent to them. And the summarizing will often end with something like, did I hear that right? Correct me if I'm wrong. How, like, is this correct? Stuff like that, to where the coach is a little bit more invested in their perception being right or wrong, or being on the same page. That's not necessarily a negative, but it will slow down the session and will tend to make the coach do a bit more work that really might benefit the client if the client were to be doing that work. Let's unpack this a bit further by looking at cultivates trust and safety from an MCC requirement standpoint. Now, this is the negative language that we'll sometimes see with the ICF standards around the MCC performance evaluation. What we look at this for is it shows if we go out on the limb of ICF coaching or Rogerian client-led coaching, what is it like to do that in terms of what we should be doing? And what is it like to not do it? If you see these behaviors in a session, that would show that you're not out on that limb of MCC-oriented coaching. Not that every session should be fully at that MCC level, but these are things that we should consider as we stretch ourselves in this space. So coach will not receive a passing score for this element with the MCC evaluations if we do not treat the client as a full partner. And that's not only choosing the agenda, but also participating in the creation of the coaching process. For instance, if we, or a lack of full partnership is demonstrated if the coach exhibits an interest in the coach's view of the situation rather than the client's. So what we're trying to say in terms of the positive, a coach should focus their interest on and demonstrate their interest in the client's view more than the coach's view, the client's understanding more than the coach's understanding. An MCC candidate wouldn't pass if the coach is not seeking information from the client about the client's thinking, does not seek information about the client's goals, or the coach demonstrates a lack of interest or even disrespect towards the client as a whole. If the coach is inwardly focused more than outwardly focused, client focused, then that's going to be a big hindrance for the ICF MCC evaluation. So we'll just get to the more positive version. The coach should invite the client to share their thinking on an equal level with the coach, not choosing the direction, but allowing the client to have input on the direction of the session. Again, inviting the client to share their thinking on an equal level with the coach. That's what we want to do. That PCC requirement, or PCC marker 6.7, looks at the idea of understanding the client in this way. The coach succinctly reflects or summarizes what the client communicated to ensure the client's clarity and understanding. I think this is a real succinct way of explaining why we reflect client language. It's not focused wholly on our understanding, but to help the client better understand themselves, ensuring the client's clarity and understanding. Continuing in with listens actively at the MCC level. At an MCC level, The coach needs to do this to receive a passing score. Listens actively is that the coach listens as a learner and demonstrates an ability to listen at the logical and emotional level or a holistic level for the client's benefit. The coach is able to hear the client's current thinking and growth and relate it to the future the client is trying to create. The MCC level coach hears the totality of the client's greatness and gifts, as well as limiting beliefs and patterns. The coach's listening is cumulative from session to session and throughout each individual session. What I'm highlighting here is really what I think is meant by the coach understands the client. We don't understand for ourselves what the client is going through. We don't understand for ourselves the details of their situation, but we know enough about, when we're curious the whole time, we know enough about the client and their story, the way they express themselves, the language that they tend to use, so that when we are using our own reflections and summarizing for the client, when we're using their language in our questions, they hear themselves. We understand enough about the client so that we can reflect that client back to them in a cumulative way, session by session, collecting more gems from them, ensuring that through understanding the nature of how they communicate, replaying it for them, the client sees themselves more effectively. I don't need to know all the details for them to be able to see themselves more effectively in the mirror. In the inverse, talks about this in the inverse, they don't receive a passing score if we do not actively hear. So I'll just say it in the positive. We should actively hear and use as a significant coaching tool the client's methods of thinking, learning, creating. Now, this is really important, goes to one of the main bullet points of what I'll share in the next slide to wrap this up. The coach needs to not only actively hear, but use what we hear, what we understand through our curiosity of the client, as a significant, if not the most significant coaching tool. And that is as we reflect the client's methods of thinking, learning, creating through reflecting back their words, reflecting back their expressions, reflecting back what we've heard of them overall all with this session or overall with the time that we've had with them, what we know about them holistically. It's not that we need to know the whole story of their situation or their problem to solve that for them, but the more we can understand about how they communicate and who they are, the better we can replay and relay that back to them. So to summarize, the coach is not expected to fully understand their client or their situation. It's not about us having that full grasp. The coach should, though, demonstrate curiosity around the client's frame, the way they see themselves and their situation, so the coach can help the client explore that frame in an understanding way. Ultimately, anything that we do, especially things like paraphrasing and summarizing or reflecting client language, these should not be about the coach's better understanding or being on the same page with the client. That shouldn't be the main objective of those skills. Instead, these should be done to help the client better understand themselves. Therefore, exploring with the client's meaningful language and expression is seen as the most productive tool in coaching. And when the client hears their own thinking and the reflections and questions from their coach, the client grows in their understanding of themselves. Now, going back to this illustration, this is, in a way, looking at what we should be able to do at the highest level of coaching, whether we own or hold the MCC credential or not. Any coach that is coaching their client should seek to understand at that deep holistic level, as we are trying our best to help them at a transformative level. And sometimes a client does appreciate that outside perspective, and we may give that outside perspective of our understanding of them, may be informed by our expert background or stories of not particulars, but overall themes of stories from other clients we might have served over the years, never breaking confidentiality. But we may share a bit. But every time we share, the client might become more and more reliant on the coach's understanding of the situation and the coach's ability to solve the problem. So if we truly do want to help our clients grow and transform, we need to rely on the client's understanding of themselves primarily as our number one way of helping them grow. We are helping them see themselves by helping them hear themselves, to reflect on their language, their expression, their body language, their tone, their energy that they bring in the session, and how they've grown, how they've expressed themselves throughout an entire coaching engagement. So whose understanding matters? Number one, the client's understanding of themselves and the coach's understanding. It does matter, but the main understanding is not our understanding of their whole story, but through curiosity, what we understand of the identity and the expression of our client's frame, so that we can more effectively reflect that frame back to them in our reflections and questions. Hope this is helpful. Thank you for coaching.